Spooner, and I'm a University of Minnesota Master Gardener here in Rice County. And as you can see, I'm not in a garden, and I'm kind of out of my realm because I'm videotaping this myself from my home computer as I practice social distancing, and I can't hook up with my videographer, Troy. So kind of bear with me as we kind of just go through me learning some new things here right along with you. So I've been busy practicing my social distancing, living a different kind of a lifestyle, as all of you know. So I got to thinking as I started to do some research and looking at spring things happening in my yard, what can we be doing being we're kind of stuck at home? You've kind of been in my yard a little bit in the past, and I've got some things coming up in the garden, perennials and tulips and daffodils and stuff, and I got to thinking to myself, well, they tell us to go outside every now and then and get some distancing, just get some outdoor air, do a walk around, and I have a fairly decent sized yard, and it's just my husband and I at home, so we've done a little bit of assessing, and I got to thinking to myself, I said, well, these are things that you FCTV viewers that have gardens or even patio gardens can probably be doing just to kind of get ready for the spring. So I kind of thought I'd share some tips with you to kind of get out there, get some fresh air, enjoy your gardens at this point, and get some things done now before the garden centers do open up. And they will be opening up. We did hear word that that's part of the new executive order, that garden centers can be open because they do have a perishable product, and it's kind of, they have a short window of time to sell their products. So support your local garden centers. So let's get started. So talking about getting outside. So basically the first thing that I start doing every spring in my garden is I do a lot of walk-arounds in my garden. I go and I check my perennial beds, I check my trees, I check my shrubs, I walk around my vegetable garden to see what's going on in there. Critters we get a lot of squirrels that like to bury their black walnuts that they find in the neighborhood out there. So I'm constantly walking around and looking. So this is a good time to do those inspections, and it's also a good time to not only see what's going on in your garden, but also check like retaining walls. If you have like permanent, flower containers that are out there, if you've got any fencing or anything, check to see how they weathered, the winter, and if there's anything that needs to be replaced, kind of make note of it so that you can kind of take care of it. It's a good time to also take a look at your turf. Did you have voles that kind of dug up your yard? Are you seeing any damage from, rabbits chewing on your trees, or deer? I get deer and I can kind of see where they're chomping on stuff on different branches, and they like to clean out my bird feeders too. So just take an assessment of what's actually been happening since the snow has melted out there. So after that happens, you can kind of maybe start to do some heavy lifting and cleaning. As you're walking through the perennial beds, how much of it did you get cut down last year? Did you get all the perennials cut down? Kind of be careful not to cut too much stuff down. Just kind of watch your weather forecast and see, because we're still going to have some cold temperatures, and you don't want to remove too much of that because it acts as an insulator on perennials that are already starting to pop up. I'm starting to see some lilies pop up. I've got daylilies popping up. So I'm kind of hesitant at taking any stuff that I didn't get cleaned out of there to just kind of cover it. But you can kind of start as you watch, long range forecast as to where you need to clean up. It's also a really good time. One thing to really cut back right now is your ornamental grasses. Cut those down because they will start to green up, and you don't want to cut into that new growth at all, so that you get that nice flush bloom, that you're not cutting off any of those seed heads at the top that are on some of those grasses. It's also a good time to take assessment of the containers that you had planted last year, if that's what you do. That's my favorite part of gardening. So if you didn't do it last fall, go ahead and start cleaning them out. You know, scrub them out with, you know, 5 parts water and 1 part bleach, and let them dry out. It's a good time to check your bird baths, to clean those out, because you want to, you can start putting them out now, because we're not having too much freezing overnight, and birds are, you know, coming back in. My cardinals have been really active and waking me up every morning, even though I have my windows closed. They're really chirping out there. In fact, my granddaughter, before we went into social distancing, spent the night here, and early in the morning, crawled into bed with me and goes, "Grandma, what are those birds out there doing?" So we were able to see some cardinals after we got up, and we could see them out in the yard. So she thought that was pretty cool that the birds had woken her up. But anyhow, it's a good time to clean out bird feeders too, just from the winter. You know, as you had snow on your bird seed and stuff, it melted and thawed, and so it's kind of chunked in there. It's also a good time to pull out your hummingbird feeders and make sure that those are clean, because starting in about May, you're going to start to see hummingbirds migrate back, and so you want to be prepared for them, because they've had a long journey coming back from the south or wherever they overwinter. So you want to make sure that you have your hummingbird feeders out there and ready for them to have some much needed food to store up energy. So, and also, as you're cleaning out those flower beds, take a look at your perennials. It's a really good time, because they're small, they're ground level, but you can kind of see how big that root ball really is. So take a look and kind of mark them, maybe, you know, if you think you need to divide them. And early spring is a good time to do that. And so you want to be careful the ones that you choose to prune at this time. So the rule of thumb for this is summer and fall blooming perennials should be done now in the spring, and spring blooming perennials should be done in the fall. So especially the ones you don't want to interrupt their bloom cycle, so you want to make sure you have the proper pruning times that you're doing. Another good thing as you're out there in your flower beds and your vegetable beds cleaning them out is soil test. I can't stress enough about soil testing, because it's so important to have healthy soil, because those are the building blocks to really great gardens. And I've done a video on it before with Ann Sawyer. You know, we talked about soil testing, and she showed how to do it. So if you want to go back through the archives at FCTV and find that. If you don't want to go to that trouble, just get on the Google machine and Google University of Minnesota Soil Testing Lab, and they will be able to give you the directions, how to do it, where to send it, how much it's going to cost, and also it'll give you kind of the time frame. With businesses being shut down or being short-staffed, it might take a little bit longer. So the sooner that you get it in at this time of the year, the sooner you are to be able to amend your soil properly to have the best gardens ever. And then it's also a good time, if you're, you know, to start pruning some of your shrubs. Some might have been done for you by your local rabbits and deer or anything that come through there. But it's also a good time to assess what needs to be trimmed back. One good thing to trim now is trimming back your hydrangeas. I have several hydrangeas in my yard, so I'm going back and cutting off the old blooms and kind of just cutting them back, and it's a good time to kind of shape them up. And also with hydrangeas and some other shrubs, they like to bloom on new wood. So rule of thumb, summer flowering shrubs bloom on new wood, so get busy pruning butterfly bushes, hydrangeas, rose bushes, and you should want to avoid pruning spring flowering ones like azaleas, rhododendrons, forsythias, lilac, and weigelias. Those are going to bloom in the spring, and you don't want to interrupt their bloom cycle. So that's really kind of a rule of thumb there. And also, another thing, as garden centers open up, as they're going to be doing, is maybe adding some spring color to your front porch, back patio, because it's nice out. You can kind of have a happy hour out there when it's really sunny out, or if you just have if it's warm enough in the morning, to have a cup of coffee and just maybe do some meditation, or just figure out what you're going to do at this point. Pansies, oh my gosh, they are just phenomenal. And I did pick up some this morning. Some garden centers are doing drive-up pickup, curbside pickup. So I picked up these this morning, and I'm going to plant them up in some pots and put them out front just to have some color. And this is called Blueberry Thrill, and I just love it. Aren't they just little happy little flowers there? They kind of just like to smile at you. And this is kind of a fun one too, because it's got a little bit of ruffling to the edges of it. So I'm going to put these out. And the thing everybody always asks me is, why can you put pansies out? Pansies like cool weather at this time of year. If it gets too hot, they will tend to bolt. So then they kind of get scraggly, and you kind of have to deadhead and keep cutting them back. So this is a really great plant to put out at this time. And when it does start to get really warm out, have them in a container that you can either take them out and transplant them someplace else where it's kind of cool and shady. Otherwise, you can just move the whole pot if you got just a pot for it. But this really adds a great pop of color to your front steps, and it just kind of gives you hope that spring is just around the corner. So, and you can also do nemesias, calendula, lobelia, sweet alyssum. Those are some other things that, if you can find them in your garden centers now, to put out in a cool pot and just have that color for your front. And if you can get them pretty soon, it just kind of makes it like there's hope that spring's going to be here and things are going to go back to normal pretty soon. So, and it just kind of makes me happy. So now if you're going to do this, and it's going to get, if it happens to get really, really cold, just kind of be prepared to kind of move them in or throw a blanket over them. But these do withstand, 20 to 30 degree weather and stuff. So, but if you're starting to see a lot of perennials and a lot of tall growth in your garden from some of your stuff, because you do have some days where there's a lot of heat, kind of watch it. If it looks like it's going to be really cold for a succession of days, make sure you have some old towels or some old sheets, and cover that stuff up, because it'll damage the tops of them and kind of make the plant kind of funky and ugly, and you just don't, it's just going to make a nasty appearance. And as the summer progresses, they will kind of grow out of that, but why not protect it now? Or if you don't want to use any old towels or sheets and stuff, if you've gotten rid of them, donated them or whatever, invest in like some row covering, and you can get that at a local hardware store. And it's a light cloth, and you can just drape it over. One thing I will tell you not to use, definitely not to use, is plastic, because all that does is it will mitigate the cold, and if it lays on the buds or on the leaves, it will freeze it. It will become colder, and so it will freeze out your plant. So never use plastic. Even if you're supporting it, you can't really manage it as it's windy and stuff, and so it's going to shift. But with this row cover, it's more of a cloth-based thing, and so you can just put that over your perennials coming out. Also a good time is to do some planning. Think about what you did last year. If you kind of kept track of what you did in the garden last year in your containers, if you took pictures, take a look at them. If you really liked them, are you going to go that same direction? I know me, I kind of look at it and kind of assess. I always like to do different things, but sometimes I come across a combination that I truly like and want to be able to replicate it. And I also like to take pictures of my stuff, because I do get a lot of questions for suggestions. My daughter-in-law that is a pretty avid container gardener too, and so she's always asking me for recommendations, and she tends to like to do her own things, and that's great. But she will always ask me, and so this way I have some pictures, because this past year I had some really cool containers that she really liked. So she said she wanted to make sure that she could remember some, because she wanted to replicate those too. So if it's something you want to share, it's kind of plagiarism is the best form of flattery to me when I'm, having somebody like, oh, I really like that combination, I think I'm going to do that too. So, and that's part of me teaching, you guys to do something. So that's just a few things that you can kind of do here. I'm here at home. I have been practicing my social distancing. My husband's been working from home. So we're finding out what life is going to be like when he gets to retirement. But we're getting along. I've cooked a lot. So we're trying some new things, and really anxious to get outside. On nice days, we are outside, we're walking, getting some exercise, and we're looking at long-term projects in our garden, and just kind of assessing when it comes up. We're going to start working on so we're going to be cutting back some of our shrubs. So that's kind of on our docket coming up, besides, planting some pansies. So I wish you peace. Stay home, be safe, and I hope that all of you are well, and all of you take care, and we'll see you next time around, and happy digging.